Hi everyone, I'm Simran. Welcome to a very special episode of Unmasked with a guest that has known me for my entire life and one of the most inspirational and influential people that I know. Welcome, Dr. Aruna Bruda. Dr. Bruda is a retired professor of clinical psychology from the University of Delhi with over 60 years of experience in mental health and transformative psychology. She is one of the trailblazers who established the field of mental health and psychology in India. She holds a PhD in clinical psychology along with advanced training in rational emotive behavioral therapy from the University of Wisconsin and advanced counseling techniques as well. She's held lots of leadership roles, including the president of National Academy of Psychology, editorial leadership at the Journal of Research and Applications in Clinical Psychology. She's been recognized for her trailblazing contributions and has received multiple Lifetime and Excellence Awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award by Indraprastha College of Women, Global Indian Excellence Award in the US, and Educationist of the Year, amongst many, many more. She trains corporate clients, high profile companies. She serves as board members, as consultants for recruitment, and runs workshops across institutions that are focused on stress, conflict, work life balance, and relationships. So thank you, Dr. Aruna Bruda, for taking the time and a very special introduction that not many people know. Here in the US is Dr. Bruda is my godmother. She's my grandmother. And I've been very, very lucky to spend my lifetime with her. So thank you very mummy for taking the time.
Thank you, Simran. Thank you so much for giving me that status that I'm your grandmother as well as your godmother. I hope I will still continue to live up to your expectations, right? But I want to say that it is very, very important to be mindful today of one's own mental health. Mental health talks about a lot of things like happiness, like satisfaction, like contentment, right? Like spiritual pleasures. It's very, very important to think of satisfaction, to think of reducing stress in the world of today, which is nothing but a material, game changer, which is harmful to one's existence. Well, if Simran has this car, I must have one up her, you know, that is a killer. But all you have to see is, are you happy driving it? Or are you just trying to show off, which does not lead to contentment? That is what I want to emphasize on. The other thing that has always been present in my mind, even as a child, let me say that. Why do we not accept people as they are? And why do we have to pass judgments on them, refer them to therapists, to doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, but not go on my own for my own betterment? And this story started when I was somewhere between 6 and 8.
Can we actually back up because you're 82 years young, right? You've seen that sort of evolution of growing up in a different part, which is now Pakistan, coming over to India after the partition. And then obviously we'll talk about your journey into psychology and mental health. But I would love to start with a little bit about your childhood years and tell us about your parents and your dad in particular. I know he had a very influential role in your life. So please share some memories that are top of mind for you growing up as a little girl.
Simran, I've always been shy of saying what my father did because I don't like to boast. He was very actively involved with Gandhiji in the freedom movement and also Jawaharlal Nehru ji. And I was very small. I was, say, from 3 years of age, I got consciousness of what my father did and where he went, who came to visit us, and who were all the time around with us and what was being talked about. But when I came to Delhi, the first thing my brother would put in my head, he was 20 years older than me, my brother. He would say, never say that you were born in Pakistan. People look down upon Pakistan. Say you were
Hmm.
born in United India. I was so wary of it, that why are we hating people? Why are we disliking people? But then so be it. Why to argue? We saw the repercussions. Until today, we are seeing the repercussions. So it's okay. Right. But when I came and maybe grew up a little between the ages of 6 and 8, there was a person standing and he was staring at the sun, which is so difficult, directly the sun, which is impossible. He would not blink an eyelid and he would not move for days together. And he would be dirty inside of him because he's not eating, he's not defecating, whatever. So there'd be children around the street who would throw stones at him, try to shake him, move him so that he moves away, but they couldn't. And they would make fun of him. I don't know why. I am born very sensitive. And so I would feel bad and sorry for that gentleman. And I once came crying back to my father and I said, why are the children hitting that man who's standing there and refuses to walk or move or shake? So my dad, he told me that gentleman is ill. He has catatonic stupor, so he's a schizophrenic and he should get treatment, but he doesn't get it because his family members are not aware about it. So I said, when we all have pneumonia, we have some other diarrhea or whatever, why don't the others stone us? Why don't the others make fun of us? Why are we making fun of that gentleman? So he said that your body is tangible. So if you're sick, you can have a thermometer to show and measure that you're actually sick and you're tangibly sick, right? You can touch and feel and all that. But his stuporous condition, nobody understands. So what you don't understand, you try to shun it away and you make fun of it, you mock at it, you know. So I said, Dad, when I grow up, I'm going to heal him. I'm going to treat him. And I think I chose my profession then.
Wow.
Little did I know that there is a cadre of psychiatrists who give medicines, and there is a cadre of clinical psychologists who do therapy. I didn't know that division, but I knew that I could heal him, and I still have the confidence. So the psychiatry word came into my ears then at the age between 6 and 8. But then I grew up, okay, my mother was ailing in and out of hospitals because she had a cardiac problem. She had a mitral valve prolapse and she had bacterial endocarditis and she was asthmatic. So my childhood was in hospitals, in and out of it, because I'm the only girl that could nurse her, understand her. It just came from within me. I had joined Delhi University master's program. I had finished my undergrad. And my mother was at Old India Institute of Medical Sciences for 7 months because she had a cardiac arrest. It was a long time. So the head of the department of cardiology came and asked me, what do you do? So I said, sir, I'm studying psychology and clinical psychology is my major, but I am unable to go to the university because I don't want to leave mom like that. So he says, do you know how to conduct an IQ test? So I said, yeah, of course, that they teach you at the undergrad level how to write a report, what tests to use, age wise, there are different tests and all. So he says, if I refer a doctor to you and he wants an IQ test to be done for his son, will you do it? I said, yeah, sir, I'll do it. And then, you know, that gentleman came with his son, and I had already called up a friend of mine to borrow an IQ test and a stopwatch in those days. This is in the year 1964. So I performed the test. I gave a report, and he was so happy that 6 other doctors from that very hospital came for their kids to be evaluated.
Hmm.
When my mother came into consciousness and she picked up, for within a week, she picked up some strength. So I started crying. And she says, "Why are you crying? I'm okay." So I said, "I think I'm not going to be a psychologist. I'm going to be a tester because everybody is coming to me for tests. I wasn't very keen to go into psychodiagnostics and do tests. I wasn't very happy with it." But then she said, "You are ungrateful to God that He's giving you a chance. This is a golden opportunity for you." So they say, make hay while the sun shines. God is putting all the opportunities in your lap and you are crying over it. You're a silly girl. Then the head of the department was informed, cardiology department, that I've done all those tests and that those doctors are very happy. So he said to me, uh, "Aruna, do you want to do something else where I can be of some help to you? Tell me." So I said, "Sir, if I can do some internship in the psychiatry department and while Mama is in the hospital, it'll be grateful. I'll be very grateful to you for that." And I had the opportunity to be under two kinds of people. And that's when we saw what a psychiatrist does and what a clinical psychologist does. So Dr. David Satyanand was the head at that time. He's no more. He's not in the world. And I worked under him. I learned how to take a case study, how to write down everything scientifically. And I was also posted under Dr. Prabhu. And Prabhu was the clinical psychologist. He was doing Rorschach. I still remember how he would, get angry with me if I wanted to diagnose a person with those responses in a certain way. And he says, "No, you're not looking deeper, go deeper still." And I think that training while Mama was in the hospital was so useful to me. I'm grateful to all that gave me that opportunity, but it created more passion in me. Passion that where will my psychology go? Because people are not aware of psychology. I thought if I'm not doing science, I'm not going to be a psychiatrist. So how will I heal, right? And my word was heal. And a psychiatrist is going to heal only with medication. And I want to heal on a humanity basis. By the way, I lost my father when I was 13. So I had a brother who was 20 years older than me. And he was just, he would, flaunt me with everything and like a dad. So he took my mother away to which hospital I forget, but they were in New York to be diagnosed further into details for heart and things like that. And there they are supposed to be doing cardiac, conversation. And I get a telephone. There are no mobiles at that time. You remember we had all those black telephones where we could
Yeah.
dial like this. So there was a phone call, and I said, the operator tells me, "Who is Aruna Dutt?" So I said, "Yeah, speaking." And my brother was there, and he tells me, "Aruna, I want Mama's cardiologist to talk to you, but don't start crying. She's not critical. She's all right, but it's about you." So my mother was talking not about herself, but about me and how sad and negative I was getting. That cardiologist said, "Hey, you little one, why are you sad? You don't have to be a psychiatrist to heal. Do clinical psychology and get into psychotherapy, right?" And I said, "Are you just trying to please me or divert my mind?" Because we hadn't heard what was clinical psychology.
I'd love to hear that was such an amazing journey into how you found out about psychotherapy and clinical psychology.
This was in 1960. I was in 11th. That was my board exam. And I did my papers pretty well because of that hope from that telephone. Now, where to find clinical psychology? Where to find in Delhi University? I was not going to leave Mama alone because she needed constant help, physical help. I had to bathe her. I had to change her clothes. I had to feed her, whatever, whatever. So I think God was very kind to me, very kind. There is an Indraprastha college affiliated to Delhi University that made an announcement that we are starting psychology honors in a BA program, which is an undergrad program. And it fitted me so well that I got into psychology. So in second year, there was a new policy in education where new subjects were being introduced. And within psychology, there was an expansion. The expansion was that you could take a special paper of clinical psychology. And so I learned everything from there. And so grateful to God, that such a thing was just put into my lap that, okay, sweetheart, if you're so obsessed with it, here it is for you. And
Weird. And had you not influenced me on the importance of healing as a child, I don't think I would have ever imagined or even thought of what I'm doing right now, right? So I think that you've inspired so many people, especially me. And I would love to hear a little bit about your dad and your mom and how they kind of allowed you to dream in those days, because
I was
you
hiding
played
that
that
part.
role. Yeah,
I
you
was,
played that role for me. When
yeah,
I wasn't sometimes allowed to dream, you were the one who really stepped your foot down. And, we had these dinner conversations with mom and dad and you,
I
and
remember that very much.
you can't hold her back. And, I'm so grateful to have you in my life for allowing
Thank
you
you
to.
so much, Simran. You make my day. You put that in me that I want to live more. I say I was trying to avoid that. I gave you a hint that my dad was with Gandhi ji and with Jawaharlal Nehru ji. He was very active in the freedom movement. At that time, there was no Haryana, there was no Himachal Pradesh, there was no Chandigarh. It was just Punjab and the Punjab of India. And my father, which in Hindi we say Pitaji, so my father was the finance minister of Punjab, but my mother could never join him because the ministry at that time was in Simla, which is a hill station. So Mama was not allowed to go to a hike because of her heart trouble. She couldn't have, been able to breathe over there, you know. And so we would shunt in our holidays to my dad, my brother and me, and he would ask us what's happening in school, what's happening this, what's happening that. He was always with us about school, college, play, games, studies, extra books that we read, fiction. What are we watching? Mind you, he'd get very angry with me if I was listening to film music on the radio. And the moment we know, Pitaji is coming home, dad is coming home, immediately the film songs are converted into BBC and we're writing the headlines of the news because dad would say, if you don't keep abreast with news, you're outdated. You're not intelligent. Why are you just listening to those silly romantic songs and all, which were not silly? I would dislike that. I would disagree with him. You know how I am. I mean, I'm open and loud about everything. My mom was a social worker till the freedom movement, but after that, when she started being more sick and more debilitated, she stopped. Also, because imagine Pitaji, Gandhiji, and Jawaharlal Nehruji were jailed during the freedom movement in the same hospital, which was a TB hospital, tuberculosis, and it was not disinfected. And my dad came back with tuberculosis, and nothing happened to anyone else. So, anyway, that's how things have to happen. So, they're destined to happen. I do believe in that. And so he developed tuberculosis of the lungs. And at that time, what were the medicines? I still remember when we say chloromycin, at that time, we would run from pillar to post to buy it, and it was expensive, but whatever. We had that. So at the age of 13, I saw dad going, leaving the world. Mom was totally heartbroken. As it is, she was heartbroken because she was nursing him for 7 years. He was bedridden. So we lost him in 1956. I was in class 8. and things like that. But mom used to be in music also. So she played the sitar and she always said, speak for yourself. Don't be like me. I did not speak up before my mother-in-law. I didn't speak up anywhere else. I only motivated women to come out and work. So I think that would have had an influence on me. The whole family, I have 3 grown-up brothers. I'm the youngest, and all males at home. Now I think back and I say, what an opportunity. I must thank God. I must kneel down and thank God. But something happened, Simran. I don't think you know about it, but I want to share it with you. One day, your mother rang me up and she was maybe in school and she said, Chachi ji means aunt. Come soon, come soon. I said, what happened? And she said, Dad is unconscious. I said, no, I'm not coming. And because I'm going to waste time, you reach that hospital directly and I'll reach there directly. Don't be sentimental. I'm not a doctor that can help. Come soon, come soon. And we were there. It was like exactly an Indian cinema that your grandfather, that is your mother's father, was in coma, unconscious. I held his hand. He was a clinical psychologist, by the way. He was an associate professor in the university psychology department. And he was the best colleague and a friend to my husband, who was at that time in experimental psychology. And when I held and pressed your grandfather's arm, he opened his eyes and he said to my husband, Bruta Saab, what's going to happen to Harjinder? That's your mom. And I said, why do you worry? I'm there. She's mine. She's no one else's. She's mine. I said that so emphatically. He closed his eyes and went away. I'm very guilty of that, Simran, because he was a clinical psychologist. He passed away. So the post fell vacant. And I was at Indraprastha College as a lecturer. I applied to be in the postgraduate department, that is the Department of Psychology at the University of Delhi.
Yeah.
And I got it.
But it was always meant for you, right? And I think that
Right.
I've heard,
Not at the cost of your grandfather leaving all of us, right?
I know
That
that's
gives me
something,
guilt.
not at all,
But
but I think you
I
lost
want to
your,
say something else. And people used to gossip. I'm going to and fro, okay, in time and in dates. People would gossip, Aruna practices, Aruna does private practice. I said, yes, I do. Okay. So when I went for the university interview, you should know that the interview selection committee forms with 2 specialists of the subject from another university, your own head of the department, one SC/ST, which is Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe Observer, Vice Chancellor of the university, Pro Vice Chancellor of the university, and head of the Department of Psychology, right? Would I have influenced so many people? No. So when I was selected, the department did not like it. They thought I wear bangles, so I'm jazzy. And they thought I wear anklets. And they used to tell me on my face, you should be in Bombay films, and you should not be a professor, because here at that time the cliche was you should oil your hair, you should have a bag, you should wear a torn sari. And another day, the head of the department said, I didn't see you yesterday. Did you take class? I said, why would you have to ask me? Ask the students. They will speak for me. Why should I speak for myself? I don't blow my own horns, no.
and
So
you are the most beautiful and graceful person that I know, and I embody you and I channel you. And ever since, you could have totally been a Bollywood actress, but you have reached so many millions and millions of people and
well,
established a
let
field
me
of
say,
clinical psych.
going back into time again, I started participating in the radio programs of children. There were children's programs on the All India radio. And I was just talking as a psychologist, even when I was a student, that this is how you should study. You shouldn't study on the bed. This is how you should walk. And this is how you should treat your sisters, your mothers, because people always had this attitude, oh, she's a girl. Oh, she's a woman. She's less than us, all that irrational arrogance and all that of men. So I was there. I got married. I had a child. And then I joined University of Wisconsin at Madison to take special courses in clinical psychology. It was a non-degree program. I chose the courses to my liking. I was already practicing here and I was teaching psychology, clinical psychology also. And I was taking practicums also of psychological testing. And my husband got a Ford Foundation fellowship. And he, being in experimental psychology, he got a chance to be at University of Wisconsin at Madison campus. And I was there. And I
And would
happened to meet Carl Rogers. And behaviorism was coming up in a very big movement. So Carl Rogers left and we finished the course on video. And the behaviorists came in big force, at that time. I joined an evening course by Dr. Tybring in a hospital, and that gave me the opportunity to take training in rational emotive therapy as well as group therapy, how to conduct groups, okay? And in the daytime, I had a 5-year-old boy, your elder brother. So Sujoy was with me, and I didn't want to be leaving him with a babysitter. So classes occurred between 9 and 12. I would just go and attend them. Then came on my way, Carl Rogers referred me to a therapist in the Jefferson County Family Counseling and Therapy Clinic. Would you believe how sweet she was that she would pick me up from a certain point and take me, because Madison was about 100 kilometers away from Jefferson. I took training there. I also dealt with juvenile, kids who were breaking law. They were possessing marijuana. Marijuana was at its peak at that time, drunken driving, shoplifting. Then we made home visits to children who were not doing well in school. And we tried to see what was going on with their parents.
Mhm.
And when I came back, I just was introduced to Doordarshan by chance. And that lady said, why did I not meet you before? I said, why? She says, I'm looking for a lady clinical psychologist. I also enrolled for my PhD.
Yeah. Before we talk about your PhD, I have two questions for you in the earlier part of your journey. One is, I would love to hear about how you met your husband, Bade Papa, Dr. Krishan Bruta. And also, I would love to hear a little bit about my grandfather and my Nanaji, who unfortunately I never had the chance to meet because mom lost her in her 20s very suddenly. So please share those two nuggets as well.
I think it was two things at the same time. Mom was advised from the hospital that she should go through a cardiac surgery. Now she said, no, you're a girl and you have to get married. I met him in the department, Christian. She was looking for cardiologists, she was looking for engineers. I wasn't ready to accept them. You will be surprised. She introduced me to a person who was making his career in cardiology. She says, go out for a date with him and you might like him. He might value your practice, so he might respect you. I said, okay. I went, I sat in a restaurant with him and I asked him, how many brothers are you? And he said, we are 5 brothers. I said, are they all married? He says, I'm the youngest to be married. All my elder brothers are married. I said, okay. I said, what do your sisters-in-law do? His facial expression, he says, what do you mean by do? They are housewives and they cover their faces and their heads at home. So I just called the person serving us. I said, waiter, please, can I have the bill? I want to go back home. He says, I'll pay. I said, no, I have nothing to do with you. I'll pay for you also. Don't worry. Just let me go. Mom was in the hospital at that time. And mom said, you've come back so early? I said, what are you wanting me to marry in that family? Where goes my practice? Where goes my career? Where goes my teaching? Where goes my research? Right? So she says, oh, My, she's such a difficult person. How am I going to set her right? But she couldn't set me right. Meantime, I came to know who's this new guy in the department. So I said hi. He said hi. He was very girl shy, but I was very bold. I took him home and I said, Mom, here's one guy. Try to find out what is his family background or something. You can think of him, right? So my middle brother made all the inquiries and said, Oh, Aruna has a good choice. He's a good boy. He has a future ahead of him. He's very educated and all, and has a simple family.
But you
So
also fell in love and you are still in love, right?
I'm in love, but I also scream for my status and I refuse to be taken for granted. And I refuse to be in the kitchen all the time. And I refuse to be doing schoolwork with my children single handed. Oh God. I mean, God probably fell short of people. He put all the good qualities in him, rather than like he can be an engineer, he can be an architect, he can be a carpenter. And I say, I'm nothing. Yeah, but I'm still happy because I can heal. It's very close to my heart, right? So that was the married life. The few early years were very, very difficult. And then everything smoothened out and I have two sons. Then your mother got married and then you were born and your grandfather would say, your father's father would say, a girl in the family. That got me mad. So now your mother was teaching psychology at Mata Sundari College and who to leave this little one with. So you would go to a play school and come back and then crib. I was hungry and they didn't give me enough food because I'm a girl. I couldn't hear that because you know how conscious I am of this differentiation and how I react to it. So I would, get you over and then sit down and counsel you. Don't dislike them. That's their background. They are brought up like that. We have to accept each one of us. There was an influence of my eldest brother also. He would do pranayam and he would do yoga. I've told you he's 20 years older. And that's how I started getting into yoga. And that is how I realized that if you have control on your breath, you have control on your emotions, you have a control on your negativity, and they leave you very relaxed neurologically, physiologically, biochemically, and psychologically. All four are integrated. You remember you to meet Dr. Deepak Chopra, and I was telling you, I'm so jealous of you. I wish I could be with him because he's my idol these days. I read and read, I speak and speak. Deepak Chopra. And there you send me a photograph with him. Jesus, I could smack you. It
And
was fun.
we have to get you to New York. And I know you've been,
I can't
you,
travel
yeah.
anymore. My back hurts in high altitude. The back hurts. So, how do you get me to New York? This is how you get me. This is how you get me. I can give you a lot of motivation to do what heals you. Each one of you, I can tell you, I promise you. But this is what we are lacking in the world. You've gone to the moon, right? But you have come back more and more animalistic because you are jealous, you're unhappy, there's no contentment. Whether you look at New York or you look at Delhi, you look at Bombay, you're staring away at a person who's driving at a speed showing off his sports car, right? You can't believe I had a doctor, a medical doctor coming to me for counseling who said, Doc, there is a very big car outside your house. So I said, Yeah, there is one. What happened? He says, I wanted to kick it and put a dent on it. So I said, Why? Tell me. He says, I feel bad. I don't have one like that, right? So I said, You might have three like that. But will that help you overcome OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder? He says, Yeah, you're there, na? You will always help me. I will come get over it, but I want those cars. So
Wow.
we are materialistic. Your mother, brought up two girls. How unfortunate. And you would resent it, and I would be reminded of my childhood. Dare you tell me you're a girl? Dare you tell me? Because I believe I am not here to supplement anyone. It's a sheer chance where you're born. It's a sheer chance where you're born.
And also, the other secret is that my mom and dad actually met at your place. And I remember that mom was in her 30s. So, mom and dad got married pretty late, right? And you met dad first, and then you were the matchmaker between mom and dad. And I always remind them every time they pester me now that you're at a certain age and you're not married, and you are the one who puts her foot down and say like, don't force her, she'll do it when she's ready. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that there are people like you who are questioning the societal norms, the questioning the conformity.
But Simi, you are in the US, so you can afford to talk like that. But when I talk like this, I am not liked by people. Do you know? If you tell me you were lucky you had me, so ask my husband if he likes me, because he says, "Why are you always looking at a girl, and a boy, a boy?" I said, "Because you do it. All boys want to marry a girl in India who's a shade less than them. Why?" So I say that I may have one kind of an asset, say in my nature. You have another. Christian has another. Some XYZs would have another. And we learn to accept, okay, this is the speciality. We are still very closed minded because husband and wife are taken as one dependent on the other, and it's generally the woman dependent on the man. So that is bad. But my one mission in life, I want my population, my country to realize that it's psychology that upsets you. It's psychology that you have IBS. It's psychology that gives you diarrhea. It's psychology that gives you piles. It's psychology that gives you a cardiac arrest, besides the physiology. And therefore, medication, no doubt, is one way, one methodology to deal with instant help. But till you don't search your inner mind, your unconscious mind, till you don't search your jealousies, till you don't search your anger, your resentments, you are not going to be happy or resolved. So, if you are going to do pranayam, and you are able to control the fundamental of life, that is breath, you're learning how to control breath, body, physical processes, psychological processes, neurological processes. And with that, you combine counseling, therapy, and talk about your early childhood experiences. And you analyze those experiences and then do behavior modification on that. Reconstruct the personality of a person. You will find that happiness comes and falls in place, and not the chasing cars. It's not material that matters so much. Yes, we need material. I am not making a saint out of you. All I'm trying to tell you is be peaceful inside you. Only you can make a peaceful home, then only you can make a peaceful city. Otherwise, there is guns in schools, there are suicides around you. Children are committing suicide because we have not done well in studies. What will our parents say? Damn it, are you studying for your own self or your parents? Maybe you've chosen the wrong path of life. Maybe you can find out what subjects can be of interest to you. But then committing suicide also are mental disturbances which you are unable to handle yourself, and you try to take life away, which was a blessing, that life.
Yeah. So you work with a lot of high profile corporate leaders, organizations, a lot of people in midlife, right, that have achieved that status, and they have not really prioritized themselves. They have not prioritized their mental well being or their happiness. What would you share as your happiness toolkit? Because we just spoke about, you beautifully mentioned that your mental health is what basically leads to your physical health. It's inside out, not outside in. And we tend to focus on the physical ailments without addressing the emotional and the mental ailments. For anybody who's in the US, in India, very successful, but also in a high stress environment and maybe a little bit dissatisfied in life, what are the three things that they can do? Three simple things that can
The
help them.
my first package is I want you to walk because you don't have endorphins in your body. Endorphins are the happy hormones. Your skin is stretched with stress. They need to relax. They've forgotten how to smile. It's an artificial smile. So the walk is very essential because when you walk, you're to yourself. You've forgotten yourself. I do a tiny little exercise in all my workshops. I've done it for BSF. I've done it for army people. I've done it for border security forces. Who am I? Right? Who am I? Right? What I am not. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. What I am not, what I want to be. So your real self and your imaginary self, is it poles apart or is it in sync, will give you how satisfied or how dissatisfied you are. But the first response that I get from the people is, Doc, we've never said this to ourselves. We've never written it down. We've never talked to ourselves. There's no time to talk to ourselves.
So,
But my second step is that when you've got used to that walk, now sit down and be mindful of how you're breathing. They're not mindful of that breath. You know why? Because we take our breath for granted. We take our life for granted. We never realize that it can suddenly stop beating and you're not there to give the file. And for you and for that guy, the file matters more than his breath and your breath, more than his child and your child also. Each one of us is a parent. Each one of us is a son or a daughter. Each one of us is a sister or a brother. We just forget that. We are all into those files.
the number
And
one, take a walk.
walk. And number two,
Rest.
I will never ask you what time do you wake up in the morning. I will say, what time do you sleep at night?
So sleep.
After all, the brain is a machine. It's a thinking machine. What are you doing to it? Your eyes are a watching machine. And on that small screen, you are screaming into your retina. What am I seeing? What am I seeing? Pornography, very addictive. Okay, what am I seeing? Gaming, very addictive. What am I seeing? Drinking, nightclub, dates, so many sites on dates. I'm going there. Who's that girl? Oh, I forgot. Oh, yeah. You even forgotten who you dated, right? And then you look at their respiratory pattern. So the first step is sleep, regulating the sleep. Second, the walk. Third, the breath work. Fourth, time management. If you don't do that, no matter how many sessions you take in just breath work, in just walking, you have to combine. And lastly, or firstly, or simultaneously, the food that you eat. What is on your plate is on your mind. What is on your plate is on your face. That's very important to understand.
And also, what you mentioned along with the walk is the self inquiry. Who am I?
Yes,
Who am
who
I
am I?
not? And what do I want to be? Or who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Okay,
I will
wonderful.
I'll not name the industry. I was invited to give a talk on International Women's Day, okay? It's 8th of March. And I went to a white goods industry and it was for women managers. And we were there, so we did this exercise. So one lady must have been in her 45, 50 years of age, said, Ma'am, I want to read out what I've written. I said, no, sweetheart, this is your personal diary. So who am I? There are ways of looking. What is the context at which you have written, who am I? What is the place at which you have sat and written, who am I? If I was in the hospital and somebody asked me to write, who am I would have said, I'm my mom's daughter, because mom was in the hospital at that time, right? But this girl, lady, she writes in her office, who am I? Now hear me out. I am a girl. I am a mother. I am a wife. I am a daughter. Right? I am the vice president of marketing. That means her loyalty to her office comes only fifth on the list. If I'm looking at it from the HR point of view, what are the loyalties of this vice president marketing, VP? Right? She opened the Pandora's box, and someone else also stood up, maybe a little younger, and she wrote, I'm a wife. I wish I was not, right? I wish I was only working. I am a good worker. I am a senior manager, but I love my children. I love to be a mother. Totally different. Totally different. Now, when this study was being done, I should quote the author, but I've forgotten their names. And it is called a probe, a self concept probe. And I took it. So what did I say? Who am I? I am a psychologist. This was my first sentence. I don't have to write I'm a girl. I don't have to write I'm married. I don't have to write, I have two sons and I'm very kind to them. I don't have to write I served my mother. I looked after my brother. And I just said, I am a psychologist and I want to be in the media because I want to reach out to people. I want to do talk shows on depression so that people don't believe in magic. People don't believe in magical solutions, so that people don't think that you need to go through tantrics, so that people can have variety of treatments that are systematic and inward related, that can get everything out of you, and explain things how the blood supplied through the nerves converts into thought of jealousy, inferiority due to childhood trauma, due to a role model in the family, how to break away that role model from the family, how to restart life. So you don't believe that you can have a magical solution.
Yeah. So I know it's getting a little bit late for you, but I have two more questions that I want to ask you.
Go ahead.
The first one is, first of all, I want to share my extreme gratitude for your presence in my life, for constantly blessing me, inspiring me, pushing me
Love
to
you.
live my
Love
dream.
you.
What advice do you have for me and Ish as we follow your footsteps, as we try to awaken the world, as we try to weave in the importance of mental health and well being? What would you say to us?
Will first say, which I have not used the word, and it's the key word buzz of my life. Learn to accept people as they are. Don't burn your own fuel, your own blood. Learn to forgive people for what they are or what you think they've done to you. I think forgiveness is the ultimate key, to that little box where you've kept all your saved up money, and your money is peace of mind, not dollars, not rupees, not pounds, not cents, but it is your peace of mind and happiness. Because once you realize that, why am I disturbed today? Why am I unhappy today? So and so said this to me. How dare he? How do you know why he said it to you? Maybe out of being insecure. Your aortal valve, your mitral valve has certain strengths in youth and certain looseness with age. Why are you hurting it? Just because someone else has been brought up in an era where you don't fit in. So I say, A, accept the person as he is. B, forgive him. If you forgive that, you're very peaceful. I can say, Simran, I'm a very, very selfish person. When I forgive others, it's for my mental peace, not their mental peace. I know that when each and you love me, I know that my blood increases. I know I feel very wanted. I know you give me a new life to live on, But at the same time, I can say that you have never done anything to hurt me because I care for you, because I'm involved with you. But supposing someone else had done something to me, I would have said, how dare he? How dare he? Now let me see how I talk to him. What are you doing to yourself? What?
Yeah.
See how you're crouching. What are you doing? And I say, poor guy is immature. I would say, poor guy is insecure. That's why he's so jealous. He didn't have that kind of parenting. Let me just accommodate him. It's okay. It's okay. So I'll say, come again and have tea with me. He was embarrassed. I said so many wrong things to her. She still invites me for tea. I'm not going out to please him. I have my self esteem. I have that. I need to preserve it. I don't have to injure it, but I have to heal it also because it is injured momentarily. So, this is how you get healed. So, I think that Ish and you are so lucky to be with each other. Sometimes when I see you, I see you like this and I say, hey, I wish I also had a sister. But then it's easy to say, would I have accepted her? Would I have been jealous of her? What if she had been better than me? Do you
Yeah.
see?
No, we are so grateful.
Do you know? Carl Rogers told me, Aruna, you miss your mom. I went through self analysis. Okay. So this was this part which I'm narrating that if you miss your mom, be a mom to others. That role play will take all the venom out of you. Give love, give acceptance, tolerate nonsense because the world is nonsense. Only you can be spiritual. The world is nonsense.
Beautiful.
Be spiritual.
One
What is
final
spirituality? Be forgiving. Be forgiving. You have to be very forgiving.
one final question. I would love to hear a little bit about what you thought of my grandfather, my Nanaji, Dr. Seva Singh, if you can share any insights. And then, if he were alive today, what would he think of what we are building with us?
So, your Nanaji, your grandfather, that is your mother's father, would tell me sometimes, Aruna ji, go slow. Don't be so fast. Don't be so rapid. Because in those days, I was on television, I was on radio, I was doing workshops, I was doing parenting workshops in schools for parents. And they want a perfect child, like a perfect picture. And that's not possible. Every child is brought up with some moods. He's a human being. So I used to be doing hell of a lot of work. And he would tell me, slow down because you will be tired by the time you get old. And I would keep telling him, I will never get old. And today I realize, yes, I am old because I do get tired at times. I do. Especially after COVID, I do get tired at times. But why should I get tired? I have a lot more to do and I want to reach out to people. When you have these talk shows and good talk shows like Oprah Winfrey, like Barkha Dutt, you can have these talk shows where you can reach out to people, help them understand what is jealousy, how it is harmful for your body, for your skin, for your eyes, for your brain, for your diabetes. God knows what all I can include. So I'm happy where I am. I'm happy I have you. I'm happy that we have improved in technology so much that you are at Boston and I'm at Delhi and we are together, and we can talk. And I must say, I thank you for this opportunity. I may not have been able to live up to your expectations, but I definitely repeat again, there is no physiology without psychology. There is no anger without psychology, but you can make your anger pretty, loveful, and be healthy. That is what is well being. That is what is being rich. That is what is called health, happiness. I think in the urban areas, anywhere, people go to the market to buy happiness. But unfortunately, they bring home groceries, but they don't bring home happiness. And we have to create it. Happiness is very expensive and yet very reachable, provided you do time management and you balance your life by balancing your body, your material needs, and your mind.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your
God
wisdom.
bless you. That's the Indian way. God bless you. And God bless Ish. Give her my love and tell her all is well.
Yes. Thank you, very mummy.